Okay, in this video, we're going to take a look at a sarcomere. So a sarcomere is the functional unit of a muscle. What does it mean to be a functional unit? It means it's the smallest thing that actually does the job of the system. So the job of the muscular system is to contract to produce movement. The way we do that is actually having these repeating units that are all going to sit next to each other, kind of like this, and they're going to slide towards each other. And so we're going to bring this one closer together and the one next to it closer together and closer, all the way down the myofibril to kind of shorten the whole thing and basically turns the muscle into a big rope you can pull from one side. So with that sarcomere, these repeating units, they're going to be defined at the ends by a Z line. So it'll kind of look like this, something zigzagged. So a sarcomere goes from Z line to Z line. And what those Z lines are doing is they're going to help hold in place your thin filaments. And thin filaments will extend on both sides of that Z line. And the thin filaments, if you remember, are made out of primarily actin, but they also have things like troponin and tropomyosin. And the job of the thick filament is to reach up to those thin filaments with their heads, the myosin heads, and pull on them. So we also have to have areas where you have thick filament that overlap with that thin filament. Okay, and with a little bit of editing magic, there they are. So we have thick filaments here, and if you remember, thick filaments have the heads, so these little heads can reach up and pull this side that way, and these little heads can reach up and pull this side that way, and it'll slide just like that. And so what you have here are areas where they're overlapped, areas where they're by themselves, and areas where you have none of it. So we, of course, in science love to name everything. So if you remember, your sarcomere is here to here, so it's the area where you have thin filaments getting anchored in at the Z line. So Z line to Z line, that's your sarcomere. Areas where you have the thick filament all by itself will look darker if you're looking at it in a microscope. So if you're looking at it as the darker area, the trick I use here is the second letter is an A. So this is our A band. So A band is where you have the length of your thick filament. You also have regions where you have thin filament all by itself, right? If we trace this down, you have only thin filaments here. And so that looks lighter when you look at it in a microscope. So if you kind of get the hint here, so this is going to be our I band. So I band, in the center of that is your Z line. The A band, these don't just float here, they're held in place, will have an M line to anchor it. So think of it as in the middle. You can also see things referred to as discs as well. I tend to use the word line. They're interchangeable. So M line and Z line, but you can also call that a Z disc, for example. Now within this area here, within that A band, there is a separation between where you have only thick filaments. If you look right here, there's no thin filament in that little window. So of course we name it. That's going to be the H band. So I don't know why, but I think of like ha, so H and A go together. So I remember it's in the middle of that. So H band is where you have thick filament by itself, no thin filament. And then you also have this area here, so if we kind of extend the end here to the end here, where you have both thin and thick together. And so this is our zone of overlap. I don't know, I abbreviate it ZOO, but zone of overlap. So same thing over here, you have this area where it overlaps. So I'm going to move this over here a little bit so it's easier to see. So zone of overlap. And so this is basically going to repeat over and over and over again down the myofibril. So if you were to, I guess also remember to label it like all of this is kind of big band down is the myofibril. But there's a whole lot more because this is flat, not three-dimensional, but it does repeat around, and it's very predictable. You'll go Z line, all the way down, thick in the middle, M line holding it together. This side's going to pull this way, this side's going to pull this way, shortening it up, causing the contraction. So this is your sarcomere and kind of the foundation of how muscle contraction works. Thanks for watching.